All right, well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this panel, which I'll describe here in a couple seconds. General Brito, sir, good to see you again. You got to put up with me twice today. I'm sorry about that. I apologize. Other general officers, command sergeants, majors, and distinguished guests. So thank you for joining us for this panel. Panel is titled, Strengthening the Profession Through Writing. The Chief of Staff of the Army's recognized Articles of the Year. My name is Ray Mason. I retired in 2014 after 35 years in the Army. But I'm now an AUSA Senior Fellow. My job before this is I ran Army Emergency Relief for 7 years. Turned it over to Tony Grinston, former Sergeant Major of the Army. Being the director of AER was the second best job I ever had in my life. The first was being a battalion commander in the 82nd. Pretty tough to beat that. By the way, the chief is and always has been a great supporter of AER. Let me just say that right off the badge. I now have an AUSA badge. I got rid of my Pentagon badge after 4 tours in what I call the House of Pain, but I did keep my POAC badge, which is much more important. The Association of the United States Army is proud to provide support to the Harding Project in multiple ways throughout the year, including discussions like the one we're about to have. Today's panel highlights the outstanding writing of our Army professionals. AUSA, Association of the United States Army, is your professional association. It emphasizes and supports the U.S. Army's message to both audiences inside and outside the Army, and helps to further the Army's mission. And the AUSA's mission, as you know, is voice for the Army, support for the soldier. Of course, we cannot do this alone. AUSA relies on its members to help tell the Army story and to support our soldiers and their families. A strong membership base is vitally important for our advocacy efforts in Congress, the Pentagon, and the Defense Industrial Base, and to the public in all the communities across the nation. There are 122 AUSA chapters in the United States, as well as located in 9 other nations around the world. So let me ask you a question. Who all here in this room is a member of AUSA? Every hand should go up because the mere fact you're sitting in this room, you registered and you became a member of AUSA. So 100% of you are a member of AUSA. And it's a no-cost membership, by the way. If you want to go the next level up, it's called a premium membership. You can elevate your benefits, and if you get that email that shows all the different benefits that AUSA have, it's pretty remarkable. So I ask you to consider that. Obviously a paid public announcement right now, but we couldn't do any of this without our members. So every membership helps and helps us give the voice of the soldier in our Army. For your pay raises, for all the benefits you have, you can thank AUSA for getting that message to Congress. It is now my great, distinct honor and pleasure to introduce the 41st Chief of Staff of America's Army, General Randy A. George, who's going to provide some opening remarks. So, sir, the floor is yours.
All right, how's everybody doing? Everybody doing great. Who is at AUSA for the first time? I always like to ask. So big number. All right, so I never take that for granted. I think the first time I came here was after brigade command and didn't know all this existed. So we're glad you're here. So this is great, and this is really all about our Army. So I am really super proud of what we have done and where we have come with the Harding Project here over the last year. And I've been recognizing articles every month. I think we've done 39 here total over the year. But before we go into that, there's a couple of other folks I'm gonna surprise that I wanna recognize. First, I wanna thank General Brito and Biggs up here and driving this. I always tell the story that when I was company commander, I remember reading an article on training management tips, and it was basically how to not screw up a training meeting, which I was getting brand new company commander and definitely had it in me. And read about somebody who had struggled through a training meeting, company training meeting, and I was like, holy cow, that's really, really helpful stuff. And I think this is what this is all about, is about sharing the lessons that you have with your peers and subordinates. And we have so many amazing things that are happening around our Army. And I also think about how tough it is for things to stay up to date, especially as fast as the world is evolving. And I know we can do that when we're sharing lessons back and forth among professionals, and that's really important thing. So this all started with a little conversation, and I was actually talking to then Major Zach Griffiths, who was in my office, and we were arguing over force structure. I don't know if you remember that, Zach. And so we started talking about strengthening our profession and writing. And the guy who had the idea for this is right there. Come on up here. Zach and Sergeant Summerlin, I want you to come up front here where everybody can stare at you somewhere here. So he was in there and he came back, and I called him back, and he thought I was going to yell at him about force structure, which I probably should have, but I didn't. And I started talking to him a little bit about his idea about Harding Project and what we need to do. And I told him about how frustrated I was that our manuals, that you couldn't find things, and you get these big PDFs, and how we needed to, make things more accessible and getting people to write. And Zach and Sergeant First Class Summerlin, who wrote a really good article, I think when we first got this started. So that's how he volunteered or was voluntold for this. That happened way last summer. But it's a perfect example that I always say you get the best in our Army from oftentimes from just bottom-up innovation from people that understand intent and great young leaders that are out there just moving out. So I'm not going to give them a coin because they might think that they get some time off. But I would like you to join with me and give them a big round of applause here for this group. No time off for either one of those. So I think we have a kiosk downstairs that's important. I want everybody to see it on line of departure. And I know CAC and TRADOC has spent a lot of time here on making sure that we get that, again, mobile friendly, so that you can actually see what's happening on your device. And I know I pick up like the Journal and the New York Times in the morning. They don't send me a PDF. I can actually look at it and search and go through all those things, and that's exactly how our manuals are going to be. So I'll get off stage here, but first I want to recognize, and we chose all the articles through the last year. We chose 3 articles as Article of the Year. And I'm going to give everybody a coin. And again, only Sergeant Major Hester is not going to get the 4-day pass with it because General Rainey already asked me not to. So I'm going to have them come up here. I'm just going to say a couple of things if I can get the authors when I talk to you about it a little bit, just to come up, and then I'll come down and give you a coin. But the first article is Techcraft on Display in Ukraine, and that was by Command Sergeant Major Hester, Command Sergeant Major Doyle, and Captain Sefton. And this article demonstrates how soldiers are adapting to technology for battlefield advantage. And it's obviously a key lesson as our Army continues to transform in contact. Okay, article number 2, Enabling Maneuver in Large-Scale Combat Operations. And that's by Sergeant Major Shane Short, who regrettably cannot be here today, Captain Vince Kirk. Where are you from? Where's Captain Kirk? What Center of Excellence are you from? Cyber Center of Excellence. All right, is here, is going to representing. So that article underscores the importance of communications and warfare and the need for signal soldiers to think beyond technology and integrate with maneuver elements. And then the third article, and I think we just have one of our authors here today, really good article by Lieutenant Colonel Eric Davis and Nick Frazier. And so I think Nick is the only one that's here. Eric is in Australia for Senior Service College, can't join us today. But that article highlights how informal online membership can enhance professional development, especially in today's interconnected world. And again, really great articles. I recommend all of you pick these up, take a look at them. We should probably hand out a quiz right now on all 3 of them. Really good articles. But I want to thank all of them for writing and doing and helping us to strengthen our profession. And then last, since I'm going to exit out of here, Joe Byerly, I want you to stand up. There's another guy who's done a lot, and I've been on with Joe as a podcast runs the Green Notebook, who just does amazing thing. And this is another, we have a lot of people out there that want to make our Army the best, make sure that it maintains its prominence on the battlefield. And Joe, I want to thank you for all that you do. And I appreciate the fact that you came in here with a pretty damn good haircut after retiring. So good to see you. Thanks for what you do. Okay.
All right, as the chief said, my name is Joe Byerly, recently retired from the Army about 45 days ago, and I'd just like to, even though he stepped out, I'd like to thank the chief for focusing on writing about 2 months after I dropped my retirement paperwork. It's awesome to be here, and it's awesome that we're celebrating writers who want to make the profession better in a venue like AUSA. I started From the Green Notebook in 2013 as a captain, with the goal of just sharing my ideas to make the profession better. And then over time, the website morphed into, it was no longer my personal blog. It belonged to the profession of arms, with soldiers, NCOs, and officers sharing from not just our Army, but our NATO allies and partners. And 9 years ago when I was a field grade and reported to my battalion as a major, the very first thing my boss said to me was, I don't want to hear you talk about writing. I don't want to hear you talk about reading. I just want you to focus on your job. And so from 9 years ago to today, where we're celebrating authors, people making the Army better through writing, officers and NCOs, is amazing. So with that, our panelists today is Sergeant Major Doyle, Lieutenant Colonel Nick Frazier, and Captain Vince Kirk. As the chief said, Captain Kirk did not write the article, but he's the military editor-in-chief for the Communicator. And so the first question I'm going to ask each of the panelists is, what was the idea behind the article that you wrote? And if you could just talk a little bit about what that article was about.
Yeah, so Joe, just thank you for opening up right now. But I do want to, before I get started, I want to say a couple thanks to a couple of people that mean a lot to me. Sergeant Major Hester, thank you for reaching out and opening up the aperture of building the profession and strengthening the profession with allowing us to be part of the article that, as Captain Sefton from my regiment as well, was part of the article. But Master Sergeant Smith kind of brought it all together. She's the PAO from Futures Command. So if we can all just give her a round of applause just a little bit. I'm all about giving credit where credit's due, so thank you for that. But as it came to me with how, the concept of techcraft, I had the conversation with Sergeant Major Hester, and what we wanted to do is we wanted to go ahead and generate conversation across the force about what it means to get after techcraft, because we hear a lot about fieldcraft and we hear a lot about innovation that happening across the Army. But how can we synthesize that in such a way that we can bring it to the force and in the conversation aspect? And that's what we did with our article. And we talk about techcraft being that piece where we can take any of the technology that's out there, apply it in real time, and be able to fight potentially against that threat that's at our doorstep. And coming from 2nd Cavalry Regiment and USARAF and 5th Corps, we kind of have a threat at our doorstep every day. We see the lessons learned that are happening in the Ukraine, which was a catalyst to the article after writing it. Is a lot of the lessons that we're watching as the Ukraine is adapting to the battlefield out there. And what we're finding is that they're finding positive gains in some of the things that they're doing from just leveraging simple technologies that most of us have the ability to get hands on, and they're actually using it to fight and sustain themselves in the battle and survive. Now, again, what we want to do is there's innovation happening across the force. That's kind of where we're at right now with the article, and we want to just generate conversation. And we talk a lot about leading change in the Army. This is the part where we talk about actually like getting past of the old school mentality of breaking through that barrier and actually making change happen in an organization. And if you get a chance to read the article, there's 4 things that we talk about on how to create a culture in an organization. And that's where you invite change into your organization by finding the right people. You're enabling them by giving them resources and time. And then you're leading them through that opportunity. And then right now with what we're doing is we're sharing that with the entire force about how we did it. Now, it's not the end all be all, this is the cookie cutter way that you're going to find innovation and tech craft, but it's a conversation starter to make sure that we can go out there and find ways to adapt to the battlefield that could potentially be tonight. And so that's what we're getting after, is the fight now mentality of being able to utilize the technologies that's out there and get after it. Hopefully that answered all the question.
It did.
I kind of went far into it, but
that was a good one.
Sorry.
So for Nick, speaking of conversations and thinking and putting that in writing, could you talk a little bit about your article?
Sure. So my co-author was Eric Davis, Lieutenant Colonel, promotable. He's in Australia right now doing the War College. A little background, he was my Special Forces Company commander when I first showed up as an SF captain. So not only is he a friend of mine and my co-author, but he's also been a mentor to me over the last 10 to 11 years as well. An article is fundamentally about good units have formal professional development programs, but great units have informal ones. Historically, we used to do things like beer calls. Once a week you'd get around to the local mess and you'd have a very informal gathering and you would learn tacit lessons. You would get to hear wisdom from those that came before you in a less formal setting. There's other ways you can get that. You can get that over the hood of a Humvee when you're looking at the map and you're trying to figure out how to get to your objective. You can also do it on an airplane ride when you're sitting in the airplane. But one of the things we've noticed is that with the dampening of alcohol use, the generational change, soldiers don't necessarily want to spend a lot of time on post once work's over with. And then also the rise of technical, of new tools online, specifically things like Facebook, Discord, Slack, Teams, et cetera, we now have the opportunity to stay connected despite where we are geographically located as well. So in the article, Drink, Think, and Link, we argue that, hey, this is a great opportunity to help supplement your unit's professional development program. And just because the best way to do it is to allow it to be organic and grassroots, and it's okay not to take it too seriously. Allow opportunities for people to provide draft white papers if they want to get published, if they want to do spicy memes to make fun of something that happened at the unit, or just to ask for guidance. Hey, I'm a captain, I don't know what I'm supposed to do post key development time, does anybody have any options for me? And when you start building this organic grassroots network of people in the same communication channel, a lot of really big benefits happen. One of the concerns real quick about it is that people get concerned about, if we're having all these conversations, what about classification? We got to trust our shoulders. If it gets to a classification level, you take it back to work and you put in the right communications. But I would argue that the benefits vastly outstrip the risk. So that was our.
Okay, and then for you, Captain Kirk, like as we said, it was Sergeant Major Short that wrote the article. But can you talk to us about the why behind that article and a little bit about what it was about?
So in talking with Sergeant Major Short, one of the things he wanted to point out is how signalers aren't prepared by doctrine and training to step into the tactical world and actually influence commanders in their movements and things of that nature. And so he highlighted digital emissions and how in the Ukraine and Russian war right now, how they're using digital footprints and things like that to do drone strikes. And something we do at CTC in most of the rotations is we glance over just how big our digital emissions are. I know I've sat in them about 4 times and looked and I'm like, oh, I'm not the worst, but I'm not the best. And we just kind of gloss over it. There's no really like penalty for it. But in real world scenario, he wants to highlight that it's life or death when you really think about it. And so we need to get better as signalers of learning op orders, learning tactical movement and things of that nature, so that when we sit in the room and do our briefs, that we're able to better enhance our commander's ability. and so that we, when the time comes while we're in this interwar period, we're better prepared in case of something arising. So he just wants signalers to just get back to the basics, get more in tune with what the tactical units are doing. That way we can, like I said, better inform, get more equipped with RF, HF, and having a digital rotation so that our emissions isn't as grand as it is on the battlefield. And that's basically how we've been training probably for like the past 10 years. We go out, we set up our STTs and TCNs, TPNs, and things of that nature, and we let all of it run 24 hours, non-stop until we pack up and jump. And so dating back to World War II, something else he highlighted in it is just, putting everything on a rotational period, being able to use the UAS platoon and the times in which you're being, drones are flying over. So minimizing it during those periods, rotating through just to keep your digital emissions to a minimum. And so those were his main points of the article.
All right, thank you. Now, I'm hoping there's no fact checkers in there, but I'm pretty sure this is a solid fact. Like, I think Sergeant Major Hester and Sergeant Major Doyle are the first two active duty sergeant majors or even NCOs to publish at War on the Rocks, which was awesome. But Sergeant Major, why is it important for NCOs? I know a lot of times in a lot of conversations, it's like that's what officers do. Officers, write in professional publications. But it's a two-parter. One, why is it important for NCOs to write? And what advice would you give to NCOs who are thinking about it but are a little too fearful to take that leap?
That's a great question. And, it's kind of hard for some people because they use the catalyst. They don't have enough time to write articles or to get after it. And like you said, there's a lot of officers that find the time. So why can't NCOs find the time? If there was like a really big message here to kind of send to the force is that NCOs bring a wealth of knowledge and experience that is untapped sometimes. And if we can explore that and then invite and encourage our junior NCO Corps, our senior NCO Corps to get out there and share those experiences in a professional setting and in writing, it's powerful, it's moving. And you talk about what advice would I give, I would tell you that it's the first part of fear of thinking that somebody's going to think less of you or somebody's going to judge you. But this is part of what we do. It ties with the Army values. You got to have some personal courage. And what you'll find, though, is the non-commissioned officer corps has this upbeat tick when it comes to like finding ways to inspire, encourage, and motivate people to do things. And once you break that tap open, it's hard to stop. And that just kind of goes back to me and Sergeant Major Hester. Once we kind of wrote this article, we found kind of this passion. It's been invigorating for us to kind of watch where this has gone, and then sharing this everything that we've been through, the process of the co-authoring it together and through the editing process, and then watching the result that came out that's drove conversation across the Army, and not just the Army, across the Department of Defense, because we're getting phone calls from everybody about what it is that we're trying to get after with this, and it's driving conversation. So don't be scared. Get out there and do it, and don't use the excuse that you don't have time, because that's what you got to get past.
Thank you. And I know I'm just the moderator. I'm supposed to ask questions, but I'm going to pretend like this is my podcast. But I think you said it probably like 6 or 7 times when you were talking, but I think this is really important, especially for people who are scared to write, is you kept saying that all you guys were doing was starting a conversation, and the conversation has kept on going. And for me, writing as a captain, writing as a major, even stuff I write now, the idea is just starting a conversation. And I'm not telling anybody what to do. I'm not telling people to do things better. I'm just starting a conversation. And I think, with the chief's focus on professional dialogue, somebody, one side, whether it's an NCO officer, somebody needs to start that conversation. So I appreciate you. He was tapping his foot under the table every time he said starting a conversation. So moving on to Nick, you're talking about linking people online. Have you found that through writing, or the folks that you've talked to about writing, has opened doors to mentorship outside the chain of command and even networks outside the chain of command?
There's a direct correlation to getting and professional dialogue, and then opening yourself up for networking. It's just another vehicle for you to put a business card out there and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking and talking about, and if there's any like-minded souls or professionals out there, I'd love to link up with you. A lot of the things that happen when we write about, hey, this is what I use back the post-captain K development all the time. The amount of captains that have reached out going, hey, I'm looking at doing the Olmsted or the Downing Scholarship or any of these other things. Could you help mentor me or point me in the right direction or connect me with an alum? Those types of things are really, really hard to do if you only go through MilPer, but when you start creating these communities and these networks, it really helps tie together the network as well.
Yeah, and then I'm gonna a follow-up question to that. What would you say to especially like junior folks? Because if you're putting something out there, even if it's a question, there's a fear factor to that. So what would you say to junior folks on writing and contributing to the profession?
So publication, as we all know, anybody's been published here, is a process, and you go back and forth with an editor. And so it's not like you could have a negligent discharge where you're going to write something crazy in a tweet and send it out there and have a PR disaster. You can be professional and bring up points that you want to talk about, but let your mentors and let your peers take a look at the paper and make that thing get to the best possible form it can get to before you publish it. I have been in units where my peers wanted to publish, and the senior leader, this has been very, very rare, said, well, if you've got time to write, I'm concerned about what the rest of your unit's doing. But that same leader never had an issue when somebody was doing 3-gun training or endurance running, but for whatever reason in their head, there was this anti-intellectualism. So I would say that's, just like you said before, now the profession is celebrating writing and tying it back to making a more lethal force.
Okay, and then that's a good one. And Vince, going down to you, you're a Harding Fellow, right? And you're doing you're the military editor-in-chief for the Communicator. So what has that experience been like for you? And as you get more involved in your role, what are some of the things that you're looking for as far as submissions go?
So for me, it's been beneficial being away from like the tactical and as well as like the ESB world. I'm not in tune with all the new equipment that's coming out, and so watching the ups and downs that the soldiers are submitting with articles, I'm learning in that manner, not physically out there in the field doing it, but just learning their tips and tricks that they've been sending in white papers and best practices that they have. And then as far as articles along the lines of what Sergeant Major Short wrote, it was kind of a punch in the gut, but we all need that every time and time again. Like, you do something well, like I remember as a lieutenant, I thought I was hot stuff, I did great, and then I kind of rode that wave, and you become stagnant. And so articles like what Sergeant Major Short wrote is like, you can always do more, you can always go back to the basics, you can always get in tune with other MOSs and branches and redefine who you are, what you are, and improve your skills. So I think conversations like that are a must. It's like your coach telling you, yeah, great job, but hey, you could have did this better kind of thing. And I think it's going to be great moving forward to continue to get articles in this way, as well as like you gain experience from reading, and then you always have stuff in your toolkit to reach back into. So,
all right. So this is a part of the show where I ad-lib. Sergeant Major and Lieutenant Colonel Fraser, Nick, for both of you, right? Like, you both co-authored an article, and I think a lot of times when people think about writing, they think, man, I don't have the time to sit down. It's going to take forever. I've got to lock myself in a room and write for maybe days at a time if you've never done it before. Can you talk a little bit about what the co-authoring process was like? Yeah. And again, for people who are thinking, I don't have the time, how did you find the time?
Yeah, so as we go back to the comment I brought up earlier, is the co-authoring. It took a little bit of some deliberate work with bringing the team together, because we had half the team in Germany, and the other half of the team was back in the States. And finding the right time when it's just a matter of putting something on the calendar and holding yourselves accountable to be part of those conversations. But when you co-author, like you just mentioned, there's not always going to be this thing where you're sitting behind a room and you're writing and writing and writing. A lot of it sometimes just comes from the collaboration aspect and sharing the ideas with somebody there, taking it all in, as Master Sergeant Smith did for us, and then putting it all together. And as we kind of went through the process with War on the Rocks, which, to be honest, and I'm going to be very transparent here, I had no idea what War on the Rocks was until this article. So thanks for enlightening me on that part. Maybe because it's always been officers writing in it. But here we are. I think this is expanding the horizon. But kind of going back to it's just a matter of like bringing together. And then when we went through the editing process, the War on the Rocks, editor, he did a really good job with working with us, but giving us, tangible feedback that we can actually like go back and kind of reconstruct a little bit to make sure it sounds intelligent. Not to say that it wasn't put together intelligently, but it was just a process, and it takes a little bit of time. And that's the part where you got to come back and say, hey, put some time on the table for it, make it happen, and then here we are with a great article. And it's just the collaboration process was probably one of the most amazing things, because when you have like, a junior officer like Captain Sefton over here that has a wealth of knowledge in the Ukraine fight, he speaks fluent Ukrainian, he understands the concept just because he's an intelligence officer in the 2nd Cavalry Regiment in Europe. He brings a lot of things to the fruition of everything that's happening. And then just the sheer amount of knowledge that Sergeant Major Hester has, being as a Futures Command Sergeant Major, it's just very powerful. And then watching it all come together was probably the most enlightening thing. So, I definitely recommend, if you get a chance to co-author, if you're fearful of writing, it's okay. There's people that are going to take care of you and make sure it gets across the finish line.
I'd first say that if you wanted to know where to get started, we have a special edition of the Military Review. We all handed out white copies. I'm legally obligated to say or take a look to get started. But I'm going to answer the question differently, the way that CSM did as well. Yes, you have to find time. You got to collaborate. And there's a lot of ways to do that. But what other ways should you treat your paper? And it's not done once you hit submit. So the first draft you send in, and the editor is going to chew it up. You're going to have all your funny sentences and really witty phrases in there, and the editor is just going to take them all out, and they're going to shoot them in the head. And then when you finally get it to the right place that gets published, like, your job's still not done. What you should do at that point is you should try to get that conversation out there and get people to engage with it and get them to debate you and critique it, or maybe to reshare it as well. And there's ways to do that. You can use your personal social media account. So if you have a LinkedIn and an X or whatever, MySpace, if you still got one, Tom's in my top 10. You can also try to go on podcasts. So when we did Think, Drink, and Link, we got on It's a Blast podcast with Mike up front here. And we got another podcaster up here as well who does it really well. That's a great way to get your ideas in front of people who maybe don't have time to read, or it's not within their morning routine. Chief likes to read the Journal and the Times every morning. I don't think that 90% of people in here sit down and necessarily read the newspaper in the morning, but they may throw in a podcast when they go on a run or the drive into work as well. So what your ultimate goal is, you're trying to get that idea out there so that the community can engage it and then create that conversation.
Thank you. All right. Well, our last 20 minutes or so, we're going to open it up to the audience for questions for the panelists. If we have to, we'll just stare at each other for. If you could come up to the mic too, thank you.
Hey, I'm Lieutenant Colonel Tom Bruna. I want to say that you guys make me feel very proud to serve with you and what you've done. This is really, really cool, and it's done a lot it's going to do a lot for us. My question for you is, there's always like a threshold for what you publish, what you either put on the podcast or what you put into print. But there's probably a lot of other submissions south of that, right? So my question is, have we given any thought to building some sort of repository or a way to house all of those articles and things that are written that don't actually make the publication line, but that we have them? Because in history, a lot of times we go back and realize, man, 5 years after that, it wasn't relevant then, but it's relevant now, or whatever the circumstances that come up, having a way to search that. I'm just curious if you guys have thought about that at all.
Yeah, go ahead first. I got an answer.
Awesome, yeah. So actually, there's a really cool ecosystem out there, with the folks at Lieutenant General Beagles in Leavenworth, at the Modern War Institute, at up in West Point, and even War on the Rocks and some of these other blogs, is that when somebody submits something that may not be a good fit for one of them, we will ship it around to each other just to make sure there's a way to get that idea out. And just speaking with From the Green Notebook, we have about 12 volunteer editors, usually junior to mid-grade officers, and they will work with writers for sometimes months. One of the Chief of Staff of the Army's articles of the month, the article that he selected looked very different from the submission we got. And that was because a couple captains worked with this major to get it to publication. So I know what's really awesome for me too is the thing that got me started writing was my rejection letter from the Military Review when I was a captain. I was like, well, I'll start my own blog. But the fact that now not just Military Review but other journals are actually working with, like having Captain Kirk here as a military editor, are working with folks doing submissions. I was talking to the folks from the NCO Journal today. Like, everyone's working together to get this stuff out there. And if we have an article that we get that's not necessarily ready for prime time, we will help the author shape it to go back and then offer to bring it back. So I think the stuff that's not getting published now, at least from my foxhole at From the Green Notebook, is way less than maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah, so I want to take it and maybe subvert the question a little bit. I know we're talking about professional writing within professional journals, but if you go to look at how we're actually doing professional writing within our warfighting networks, NIPR and SIPR, we have the same problem. Try to find the SITREP you sent from Bakuba, Baghdad province, or Wardak, right? You probably can't find it. Those things are lost. Or if they are, they're buried in some kind of untangled, managed mess as well. We have to figure out a way for us to be able to generate the right insights, capture the right insights, and then put them in a way that maybe it doesn't go through a hard editorial process and goes into a journal, but we got to find a way to make it accessible in the future, because there is a balance between letting everybody's random thought to be published out there or going through a multi-month editorial process or a multi-week editorial process as well. So I do AI for my command, and it's one of the major problems that we have is realizing how much unstructured, unorganized insights, operational insights we have in the operations and intelligence realm, and this is professional writing is directly tied to that problem.
That's really great. Any other questions?
Well, thank you for this panel, and I hope you would tolerate like a question outside like the profession. I'm a civilian, but volunteering with the Association of the U.S. Army out in Kuwait. So my question as a published author, but in my own field in decision making and finance, the key problem in professional publishing is multidisciplinary. So you don't qualify for a specific journal. So I'm just curious to know, in the Army magazine or the professional journal, how you address the issue of multidisciplinary. Do you have a broader mind in accepting it, or you say like this is out of our focus, especially in things related to resilience, for example? Thank you.
So dealing with our different branches, I know we all talk individually. Say I get an article that doesn't really fit signal or cyber, but it may fit MI or something of that nature. So we reach out and try to push it along, as I mentioned earlier, to try our best to get things of that nature. Another thing that we do is not everything we publish in the Army Communicator is something meant for the line of departure. And so we have that separate entity to where even though we're going to put it in our Army Communicator and it's not going to go to the line of departure, we have our own separate repository for where articles go there. And I think most of the other journals are doing something similar, since we do have our quarterly that we're going to maintain, as well as our specific articles that we think should get out to a broader audience. I hope that answers.
Yeah, just from our experience, I've had articles written that did not fit in a journal, and there's multiple outlets, right? So if you're willing to shop them around, you can find a place to get them published.
All right. Another question?
Thanks everyone for their time, first of all. I appreciate it. Some familiar faces up there. So good to see you guys again. So I think that military writing with young soldiers is a great way to curb the impulse of social media and blast posting, just any kind of rhetoric. What ways do you think would be a good route to foster young leaders in the Army writing within your organizations?
You have an answer?
CSA, I think writing competitions are a great way to go. And I think when you have your, it's a great way to say, hey, you got a lot of anger or upsetness with how we've done this particular thing, why don't you write about it? Give me an idea, put it in writing what you got. There's a podcast I listen to that says, I don't know what I think until I see what I wrote. And I find that's very true. So if somebody complains like, hey, this JRTC rotation didn't go very well, well, tell me why. Choose your words, and the act of diction of choosing your words forces that soldier to clarify their point. And I think more importantly, once they put it down on paper, now their squad leader, their platoon sergeant can now say, well, hey, here's what you don't understand about this point right here. And it's a great developmental opportunity.
Yeah, it's actually interesting. I'll just point this out. So one time I got tasked to go back through military review articles going back to the 70s. And there was like an article from like 77, 78, leaders talking about junior soldiers, newspapers in the barracks that were basically like the precursor to our social media meme pages, and like what to do about that. So it's a problem that we've been dealing with for a while. But I was actually, I was talking to a captain a couple weeks ago about this, and you look at the following to like Army University Press, to Military Review, to the NCO Journal, to even From the Green Notebook, and it pales in comparisons to like dank memes for Dragon Teams and Fancy Bear. Some of these meme pages are out there where people are blasting the unit. And this captain, he brought up a great point to me. He said, somebody can create a funny meme, and it'll be funny for a few minutes and maybe get a bunch of likes and a bunch of shares. But that same person could take a little bit more time, write an article addressing the same issue, and publish it at one of the professional outlets and potentially make lasting change. And be able to think through that process of how do I make it better instead of just poking holes at it. And I thought that was a really great point from him. Sir Major, you have?
Yeah. No. I think something that Colonel Neal and I are kind of working on in the regiment is, trying to inspire the younger generations is, you give them a problem statement, and we're doing like hey, write what you think about this. And again, it's just like one of those things where you get after trying to invoke some kind of like thought process that you never know what you're going to get, because there may be the one person in your formation that may be able to solve some of your most complex problems. So tapping into that and then generating that concept early on in their careers. And I think the NCO academies are actually focusing on that a lot as they move up. I know we have in Europe is the squad leader development course immediately after the BLC. I think you're tracking that, where we bring the students right after they graduate, and then they go through a couple-day process of dealing with resiliency, but they write about stuff too, and then they learn a little bit more about what it means to deal with complex problems, and then put them on paper, and then be able to articulate them out in front of the public. So I mean, there's a multitude of ways. It's just a matter of like not doing nothing is probably the problem.
Just one more thing to add on that one. I think also showing that something happens when you write. I think we've been conditioned through public school systems that you write and you get a grade and it feels terrible and you don't get any outcome. But if somebody puts the time and effort in to write a one-pager or a two-pager and the CSM does something about it, that's a really positive reinforcement loop that signals everybody else like this is a worthwhile endeavor.
That's a great point. Anyone else from the audience?
Yeah, I'm Xavier, French liaison officer at the Combined Center. Thank you for the great conversation. It was really interesting. Just one quick question. So are you able to write about pretty much everything? I mean, can you question like official views? Because I think it's going to be probably one of the most motivating thing if you are able to write on every topics. Thank you.
2 points before I let my colleagues jump in here. So first is security classification, can't violate that. And the second one's good order and discipline, which is, it's subjective, right? What is good order and discipline? If I critique a TTP we did at JRTC, that may not violate good order and discipline. If I critique my boss's decisions at JRTC, that may, right? And so I think there's a fine line there when we talk about the science and art of leadership and helping people navigate what is respectful and professional and what isn't. But I think
that was spot on. I don't think we need to elaborate any more on that one, unless you want any follow-on questions from that.
No.
Yeah, well, just one thing we learned at the symposium we went to is just when you write, you want it to inspire something positive to come out from it. So if you just tear someone down the entire time, nothing good is going to come of that. You're not really going to accomplish much. But if you write, try to keep it respectful and positive, like, hey, this is what happened, and, give a solution. Because if you're not really giving a solution, there's no benefit to you writing it. It's just you like going to just a tear down session, essentially. So write respectfully and keep it positive, like find solutions to the problems you see so that can be discussed and people can find ways to move forward instead of just staying in the back complaining about something.
Hey, I'm going to add something to it, and this is a great point. This is like a co-authoring something live, because now we're generating ideas just by talking to each other. One of the things, too, that we talk about, and I've seen it a lot over the years, is you will have somebody write something that critiques the institution or critiques a policy, and they do so in a way that everybody up and down the chain of command, their defenses go up, and nobody listens because they automatically go into defense mode. And so I think, as a battalion commander, one of the things that I would do is when I would see stuff that somebody in my organization wrote, I would actually help them with the tone and the language, because I think you can get the same point across very constructively. Like, there was a book that was very popular in 2014, 2015. These guys critiqued our supply chain. They critiqued our ability to combat cyber, and they critiqued, how we incorporate satellites and our technology. But they didn't do so by writing a white paper. They wrote a science fiction book called Ghost Fleet, and everybody sprung into action on it. So I think the way they introduced these problems and got people talking about it and actually got action from it, P.W. Singer and August Cole, is a great way for anybody to, if they want to get into the writing space, is to do so in a way that gets people thinking and gets action happening, instead of putting defenses up and getting some sort of reprimand coming down the chain of command. Any other questions? Dave Chase, please approach the mic.
Why, thank you. My name's Dave Chase. I'm a little biased. I am actually a writer in the Army at Forces Command. So thank you for doing this. Thank you for your perspective. What worries me sometimes is the way that we're talking about writing as almost an extracurricular activity. It's something we do on the side when we have time. We wake up, we brew our fresh cup of alpha coffee. But when you think about it, writing and communication is such an integral part of our jobs, whatever our job is in the Army. And I was wondering if some of you could touch on your experience where writing and thinking about writing and communicating has actually helped you in your normal day job get a point across or get something done that mattered.
Yeah, let me jump in first on this one. So we got a guy back here, one of my best friends in the world, Major retired Ryan Harth. One of the things he does is he doesn't block a writing for the weekend or in the evening. He blocks in the middle of the day, and he taught me that. Hey, put 2 hours in the morning that you need to sit down and clear your schedule and write, shut your door. The other thing is one of the Chief of Staff's priorities is lethality. And people always ask all the time, what does writing have to do with lethality? I would argue that clear thinking and understanding your purpose can actually help you make better decisions. And so I kind of subscribe to Patton's idea of salty language helps you remember it better. I always ask my team, how does this help me kill people or break their stuff? And I think with writing, it can help you do that whenever I do a training activity or some kind of other operation. And the final point, how does writing help me? Anytime I need to ask for more resources from the boss, I am inherently competing against somebody else. It's bureaucracy. A well-written one-pager saying what I'm going to do, how I'm going to do it, and what the risks are, boss, if you don't accept this or you do accept it, makes it pretty compelling compared to the other person who's saying, I need it because. And so those are the three things that have helped me.
Yeah, so I mean, every day that we come to the office, I mean, we're working in some form of like written communication. We say don't lead by email, but we all know that we communicate just wholeheartedly in a lot of the email department to get the communication across. And the way that you convey the message holds a lot of weight in the way the person that's receiving it. So finding ways to be clear, concise, to the point, and finding ways. And it just doesn't just come from just you just learning off the cuff. It's actually you have to go through some level of professional development, whether it be from your senior, your senior rater or whoever it may be, just to kind of coach you through as you work your way up through the ranks. Because communication, written communication is vital in everything that we do. So no, very good point. It's a very very important piece to think about when we're going through things every day.
Yeah, and I started writing in 2013. I probably wrote hundreds of articles between 2013 and the time I took command in 2022. And I found three things from writing that actually played out in command, which is why I think that having a focus on writing is a great leader development tool. One, going back to Nick botching the quote earlier, it's how do I know what I think until I see what I say, is writing allows you to get mental clarity. And so as a commander, I was able to work things out on a piece of paper, or Lieutenant General Beagle working things out on a napkin, other than working them out on my staff. I was able to write things down, and then when I would go talk to people, I had clarity of thought, and it actually made sense to folks. Two, communication. When you write, there's two things that you need to figure out very early on. One is what is my audience, and what is my message, and write those things down. And so as a commander, the message and the audience when I was talking to my soldiers was different than maybe when I was talking to the regimental commander or the regimental command sergeant major. And so I was always thinking about those things, whether it was a staff meeting, a Friday formation, or a closed door session with my field grade. So that habit of writing, that practice of writing was always in the back of my mind. And the last thing, which is something we don't really think about writing, but it actually gets to what you said earlier about resilience, is that because I've been writing so much, and I've been writing about things that I didn't do so well at in the moment, it was only reflecting about it, how I could have done it better. When I was going through tough things, especially in squadron command, I just remember thinking, if I can just make it to the other side of this, I'm going to write about it and help somebody else so they don't have to face the same issues, the same struggles that I did. And so just kind of having that in the back of my mind helped me actually get through some of the darkest days of command, because in my mind, I'm thinking, I'm going to help somebody on the other side of this. And so I definitely think that writing is a great, writing, podcasting, whatever, is a great leader development tool that will prepare you for upper echelons of command. And then, before I went into command, working for like General Donahue, General Miller, Lieutenant General Howe, watching those guys communicate up and out and across COCOMs. I mean, the what was required of them took many years of practice of writing to get to that level. So again, I think it's not just an extracurricular activity, it's a leader development tool. I think we got time for one more question. Or is it time to go?
And just a real quick small disclaimer. He was a phenomenal commander. Sorry, Dragon.
Thank you, gentlemen, for a wonderful discussion. My name is Ellen Toner. I am a civilian editor with AUSA, where I've been for 12 years. And it sounds to me that one of the difficult moments in the writing process for all of you has been when you submit that paper to the editor, especially if he or she happens to be a civilian. So my question for you is, what are some of the particular difficulties and pitfalls that you experience in that stage of the production process? And what are some of your best strategies and tips for overcoming that difficult relationship? Thank you.
Can I? Yeah. I'll go real quick.
You probably got a better answer.
I've written things, and a civilian editor has been like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And that hurts. But when you do that, and you take a step back, you get over that initial frustration that you're not the smartest person in the world. You realize that what was clear as day in your head is not clear to anybody else. Your vision is a hallucination to everyone else. And so I think that once you pull ego out of it, it really helps you think clear and communicate better. Because if you can get that other person on the other end of the computer screen to understand what you're thinking and saying, then you're actually communicating through writing.
Yeah, I communicate to the soon-to-be authors. If you go to the line of departure, you scan that QR code and you check it out, you see a really well-polished, high-gloss article. But what you don't see is behind the scenes of all the work and editing that went into it. And so when you get that first red marked up article back saying, hey, this doesn't make any sense, you need to move it all around, that's a feature, that's not a bug. That person, that editor, is helping make that high gloss product that the world will see, and nobody's going to know about the labor pains that you went through trying to bring that thing to the world.
Anything?
No, that was good.
So being on the opposite side, it helps. It helps when your ego is taken out of it. I know the first article I had to, edit came from a colonel. And so being a lowly captain and then not a cyber captain, I was unsure about how he would take my recommendations. But he was very open, and it made everyone else on the chopping block very much easy. So I appreciate taking ego out of it and just allowing me to, read it from my perspective. Because if I don't speak cyber as well as you do, then probably the rest of the world doesn't either. And so if you can, allow me to bring it down to a level that can be understood, then that helps a lot. And same thing with Signal. I know we like to throw out a lot of acronyms very quickly, fast and furious, and we expect everyone in the Signal world to know it. But it's a big difference in being just from tactical Signal to being like an ESVE. Very different worlds, very different equipment sometimes, and you just don't fully understand the world of Signal unless you've been in all of those realms. And so as a writer, if you, allow the author to help you, make it more, I guess, like an easy read for the readers and your target audience, that makes a world of difference. So.
All right. I'd like to just right now go ahead and I'd like to thank our panelists. I'd like to thank our audience. Lieutenant General Beagle, General Brito, I know you guys are very busy, so the fact that you stayed in here for this was awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you for everybody else for staying after the chief left. And again, thank you for all of you for writing. Thanks for editing. And this was a really good discussion on writing. And one final pitch, check out Line of Departure. Like the chief said, no longer downloading 90-page PDFs. You can look at everything on your phone. And I think it's going to do a lot to reinvigorate our journals. So thank you very much.
On behalf of AUSA, I just want to extend great gratitude to our panelists for their expertise today. And as you leave, as you exit, if you look down the hall to the right, all of AUSA's publications are freely available. And you can also record a short message exemplifying why you served that could be shared on our podcast and shared with 15,000 of our listeners. Thank you again for coming today. And our next Harding Project event is tomorrow, next door, for the Depew awardees at 13:30. Thank you.
Good job.